The first AI agent you build should not run your whole business. That sounds exciting, but it creates a system you cannot evaluate, debug, or trust. Your first agent needs one bounded job with a result you can inspect. In this lesson, I will show you how to choose that job, define the operating contract, run a 10-minute test, and add tools only after the basic behavior works. By the end, you will have a practical specification for an agent you can actually build. Think of this as hiring for a single position, not announcing a new chief executive. A narrow job gives you a baseline. You can see what entered the system, what decision was made, and what came out. Without that visibility, every failure becomes a mystery. Imagine starting with a daily briefing agent. Its job is not to manage the company. It gathers approved sources, produces a fixed briefing, saves it in one place, and flags missing data. That is small enough to verify and useful enough to matter. First, decide whether you need an agent at all. A workflow follows steps you already know. When this happens, do that. Then do the next thing. An agent evaluates a situation and chooses among permitted actions. If every input should produce the same predetermined sequence, build a workflow. If the job requires judgment, classifying a request, selecting a response, deciding what needs escalation, an agent may be appropriate. Use the simplest system capable of doing the job reliably. For example, copying form fields into a spreadsheet is a workflow. Reading the form, determining whether the lead is qualified, and selecting the right follow-up path involves judgment. That second job may justify an agent, but its choices still need boundaries. Another test is to ask whether you can draw the process as a straight line. If yes, begin with automation. If the path branches because the system must interpret meaning, document those branches and consider a bounded agent. List the repetitive tasks that consume your week: sorting leads, preparing daily reports, drafting routine follow-ups, organizing research, or turning one piece of content into multiple drafts. Score each task using 5 questions. Does it repeat? Are the inputs available? Can you describe a good output? Can a human review the result quickly? Is a mistake reversible? Your best first task repeats often, has clear inputs and outputs, and creates limited damage when it fails. Do not automatically choose the task you dislike most. Choose the task with the cleanest learning loop. If one output takes 2 days to evaluate, you will improve slowly. If you can review the result in 2 minutes, you can run 10 tests and discover the real weaknesses quickly. Take content repurposing. The input can be 1 approved transcript. The output can be 3 draft posts in a defined format. You can review them quickly, reject weak drafts safely, and compare repeated runs. That makes it a stronger first candidate than autonomous publishing. Do not begin with irreversible financial decisions, vague company-wide missions, or unsupervised high-risk customer communication. Those jobs combine unclear judgment with expensive consequences. Also avoid tasks whose process changes every time. A beginner agent needs a stable playing field. Start with draft mode. Let the agent recommend or prepare the work, then let a human approve it. Autonomy is earned through repeated evidence, not granted because one demo looked impressive. Draft mode is not a limitation. It is your learning environment. It lets you compare the agent's recommendation with the decision you would have made. Every correction becomes training evidence without exposing the business or a customer to an uncontrolled action. Before giving the agent tools, write its operating contract. Define the job in 1 sentence. Name the owner. List the inputs it may use. List the actions it may take and the actions it must never take. Define the exact output format. Explain what done means. Finally, define the escalation rule. When should the agent stop and ask a human? This contract is more important than a giant prompt because it creates boundaries you can test. A useful contract is observable. Help with leads is not a job. Classify each new lead into one of three approved categories, prepare a draft assignment, and escalate when required. Information is missing is a job. The second version tells you what to inspect and what failure means. The owner matters too. A task without an owner becomes an orphaned output. Name the person responsible for reviewing exceptions, improving the instructions, and deciding whether the agent earns more autonomy. Software cannot own the business consequence. Now run one real example through the proposed job. Use one real input, one expected output, and one pass or fail checklist. Do not connect every tool yet. You can even run the test manually with an AI chat. Check accuracy, format, tone, completeness, and whether the result is safe to use. If it fails, fix the instructions or narrow the job. More automation will multiply a bad process. It will not repair one. Run a normal case first, then an incomplete case, then a case that should trigger escalation. Those three examples reveal whether the agent understands the happy path, handles missing information, and respects its limits. Write down the expected result before running each test. Otherwise, it is easy to accept whatever the model produces because it sounds polished. A written expectation forces you to judge the output against the job rather than against how impressive the language appears. Once the basic behavior passes, connect one tool. Test again, then add the next tool. A lead routing agent might first read a submitted form, then classify the request, then create a draft assignment. Do not give it permission to message customers or change critical records until the earlier stages are reliable. Each new permission creates a new failure mode, so every permission needs a test and a recovery path. Keep a permission ledger. For every connected tool, record what the agent can read, what it can write, and what action requires approval. When something goes wrong, this ledger tells you the maximum possible impact and which permission should be removed. An agent saying done is not proof. Require an artifact, a saved draft, a report, a record identifier, a file path, or a structured status containing what changed. The delivery path should be explicit. Who receives the output? Where does it appear? How do they know it is ready? If the job fails halfway through, the system should report the failure instead of silently disappearing or pretending the task completed. For a daily report, proof might include the saved file path, source count, generation time, and a list of missing sources. For a routing task, proof might include the record identifier, selected category, confidence note, and escalation status. For the first week, track how many jobs were attempted, how many passed without edits, how many required corrections, how long review took, and which failures repeated. Do not call this a success because the agent produced something. Success means the output met the contract and reduced useful work without creating unacceptable risk. Repeated corrections tell you whether to improve the instructions, narrow the task, or return to a workflow. Keep the measurements simple enough that you will actually record them. A small table with date, input, result, correction, and failure type is enough. The goal is not a beautiful dashboard. The goal is evidence that tells you whether the next permission is earned. At the end of the week, separate random mistakes from repeated patterns. One unusual input may require an exception rule. 5 tone corrections may mean the output definition is weak. Repeated missing data may mean the task is not ready for automation. Your first agent does not need to be impressive. It needs to be understandable, testable, and useful. Pick one reversible time thief. Decide whether it needs judgment. Write the operating contract. Run the 10-minute test. Add tools one at a time. Require proof of completion and measure the first week. I created a first AI agent blueprint that walks you through every step. Download it from the link on my channel profile. Complete it for one task and build the smallest version that can pass. Do not wait until you have the perfect stack. Complete the blueprint with the tools you already use. The quality of the task definition will matter more than the number of integrations. Build one small system, collect evidence, and let reliability determine what expands next.